We're going to start with 5 minutes reading, and then I'll cut off from there. Once there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. The story is about something that happened to them when they were sent away from London during the war because of the air raids. They sent to the house the old professor who lived in the heart of the country, 10 miles from the nearest railroad station and 2 miles from the nearest post office. He had no wife, and he lived in a very large house with a housekeeper called Mrs. Macready and 3 servants. Their names were Ivy, Margaret, and Betty. They do not come into the story much. He himself was a very old man with shaggy white hair, which grew almost all over his face as well as his head, and they liked him very much at once. But on the first evening, when he came out to meet them at the front door, he was so old-looking that Lucy, who was the youngest, was a little afraid of him, and Edmund, who was the next youngest, was to laugh and had to keep pretending he was blowing his nose to hide it. As soon as they had said good night to the professor and got upstairs on the first night, the boys came into the girls' room and they talked it over. We've fallen on our feet, and no mistake, said Peter. This is going to be perfectly splendid. That old chap will let us do anything we like. I think he's an old dear, said Susan. Oh, come off it, said Edmund, who was tired of pretending not to be tired, which was always made him bad-tempered. Don't go talking like that. Like what? Said Susan. And anyways, it's time you were in bed. Try to talk like mother, said Edmund. And who are you to say to go to bed when who's to say when I'm to go to bed? Go to bed yourself. Hadn't we all better go to bed, said Lucy. There's sure to be a row if we were heard talking here. No, there won't, said Peter. I tell you, this is the sort of house that no one knows what's going to mind what we do. Anyways, they won't hear us. It's almost 10-minute walk from here down to the dining room, and any amount of stairs and passage in the between. What's that noise? Lucy said suddenly. It was a far larger house than she had ever been in before, and the thought of all those long passages and rows of doors leading into empty rooms was beginning to make her feel a little creepy. It's only a bird, silly, said Edmund. It's an owl, said Peter. This is going to be a wonderful place for birds. I'll go to bed now. I say, let's go and explore tomorrow. You might find anything in a place like this. Did you see those mountains where we came along? And the woods? There might be eagles. There might be stags. There'll be hawks. Badgers, said Lucy. Foxes, said Edmund. Rabbits, said Susan. But when the next morning came, there was a steady falling rain, so thick that when you looked out the windows, you could see neither mountains nor the woods, nor even the streams in the garden. Of course it would be raining, said Edmund. They had just finished their breakfast with the professor, and they were upstairs in the room he had set up for them. A long, low room where 2 windows look out the direction and 2 in another. Do stop grumbling, Ed, said Susan. 10 to 1. It'll clear up in an hour or so. And in the meantime, we're pretty well off. There's a wireless and lots of books. That's not right. There's a wireless and lots of books. Not for me, says Peter. I'm going to explore the house. And we are ending on page 6.